who owns the outcomes from AI? Who is driving this value that we can bring into our board meetings and be able to ask all these questions around how AI is supporting the business and the strategic objective. Hello, everyone. It's Charlene, and I'm so excited to be talking about a topic that so many people are thinking about and asking about, which is who owns AI in your organization? And I was intrigued by a recent article that Harvard Business Review put together in January of 2026. And they laid out this situation. And I think this is something that many organizations are facing. So they said a Fortune 500 insurance CEO walked into a conference room and he had called his 6 top executives in, and he was going to settle once and for all who owns AI. And the conversation unfolded something like this. The CIO said, well, of course, I should be owning AI because this is AI, it's becoming agentic, and it needs to be integrated into our infrastructure, into our existing systems. And then the COO chimes in and says, well, agentic AI is clearly about automating our existing processes and operations, so I should own AI. The CFO says, because agentic AI is going to be impacting our P&L, there needs to be financial accountability. So I need to own AI. The chief risk officer says, well, agentic AI is going to be making all these decisions autonomously. So it's going to be a big risk factor. I need to own AI. The CHRO says AI is going to be our new workforce, our new teammates, working alongside our people. That's clearly a people and workforce issue. I should own AI. And then finally, the chief data officer says, well, all of you can relax. The thing here is if you don't have data, if it's not there and clean and ready, you're not going to be able to do anything. So I should clearly own AI and make sure that everyone has the right permissions. Well, the reality is every single one of them is right. And the article pointed out that this is the real problem, in that trying to designate one person to own AI doesn't face the reality that everyone has a piece of making agentic AI work in your organization. And that's what I want to talk about today. Is that if you're the CEO or you're a member of the board of directors, how do you think about this oversight, the governance, the accountability? Who owns AI in your organization? And the reality is, over the past 2 years, organizations have been putting in place chief AI officers, and they're failing. They're failing miserably. I talk to them and they say, this is the most miserable job, because they have all the responsibility and the accountability and none of the ability and the power to actually make the decisions that matter. And so this is what's happening with many CAIOs. They are being put into the technology department because AI is treated like a technology. And they sit somewhere between the CIO and the CTO, oftentimes reporting to just one of them. And this is the biggest problem here is that AI is being treated like a technology problem, and all the other departments are not actively being involved because it's an IT issue. Now, this is not just an org problem. This is much more of a question about what does it mean to own AI? And it's quietly tearing apart organizations because they know they have to do something, and the result is nobody owns AI. So in this episode, what I want to talk about is how do you go about thinking about setting up your AI leadership? And in particular, how do you set up that AI leadership so it drives very clear enterprise value? Now, the HBR article does a really good job of tearing apart really what's going on here. And we also see that the reality is AI is very multifaceted. It does touch into all of these areas. And so AI needs to be owned by each of these departments and the heads of those departments, because for them to be clear about what decisions they have to make around AI and they have clear ownership of that is a key part of this. So a part about who owns AI is defining who gets to make AI related decisions. In our book, Winning with AI, Cottrell Welsh, who was one of the world's first chief AI officers, she's been a chief AI officer since about 2014, 2015. And one of the things that I think is so important that we point out is that decision rights, decision sets, in addition to mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets, decision sets are a key part of your operating system to execute on your AI roadmap. And in particular, that we need to have a decision and accountability map and also a process to maintain it over time. Because the reality is, you could set up a beautiful decision and accountability map for it right now and today, but the next time a new use case comes along, the next time a new process wants to be automated across different departments, then you have to think again about where are these decision sets going to be. So the CEO and the board's job is really here that you want to have that's one person who is in charge of not owning AI, but owning that decision map, that decision set of how decisions are going to be made. So this is about driving clarity about who owns what. It's essentially important to understand that this is not a permanent answer, that this is going to evolve and change, and that the reality is there's going to be a lot of change coming up over the next few years. The HBR report did a really good job of laying out this, but I think it's missing one other very key important part. And this is something, again, that we lay out in the book. And that is somebody has to wake up every single day and know that their job is to drive the value for the enterprise, the value for the organization, and making sure that AI is in service of your strategic objectives. Now, we can say that everyone has that responsibility. Everybody knows the strategic objectives, and they're going to use AI in a concerted way to make sure that we're using AI to achieve those strategic objectives. But I'm going to argue today that you need one person who drives all of that. And instead of thinking about as this person owning the AI, think about this person as the conductor, the one person who makes sure that everyone is coordinated and pulling in the same direction. Let me dig down deeper into the conductor metaphor. I recently saw the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, and I'm talking here about an orchestral conductor. And the symphony was doing a concerto with the wonderful celloist Yo-Yo Ma. And the conductor's job here is to make sure that the artist, Yo-Yo Ma, is integrated seamlessly into the orchestra, and the orchestra consists of over 100 people in it. So the conductor is sitting there making sure that everyone is playing to the same score, that the performance is emotive and wonderful, and that people are working together, playing on the same tempo. There are swells, there are quiet moments, and the conductor is making sure all of this is coming together into a beautiful outcome. Now, here's the key thing. The conductor doesn't play. The conductor doesn't actually play any of the instrument. The conductor is listening. The conductor is making sure and understanding where is everyone and their expertise contributing to the whole. And the conductor is the person, again, who wakes up every single morning, as I said, and is making sure and thinking about what are the pieces that need to be here? How do we need to change this given the circumstances that are happening? And the person who is conducting AI in the organization plays that really important role that no one else in the organization can play. So Katya and I, in our book, really strongly advocate early in it that you need one person who is going to drive these outcomes. And now imagine if you didn't have one person driving these outcomes. We talked a little bit before that you have all these functional leads. Everyone is working and optimizing for their particular focus and area of expertise. So the CIO is there owning the tools. We have the CFO owning the budget, the CHRO owning the people, the CRO owning the controls, and the CDO, the Chief Data Officer, owning the data foundation. That's fantastic. The room is full, the slides are good, the vendor demos are going well. And you're finding that the work isn't moving forward because no one is truly owning the outcome and making sure everyone is coordinated and moving in the same direction. This is the empty chair in the room. And the reason why many organizations today are facing what we call pilot purgatory. You have lots of pilots, but they tend to be very focused on one area. They do not have that authority and that authorization to make changes and to pull people into a project, to make that pilot a priority, which is why we say, don't do any more pilots. In fact, kill the pilots and decide on a few projects that are going to be driving value for your enterprise. And again, these are highly strategic. They are intentional. They are things that you have decided as an organization that are important to be using AI in service of your strategic objectives. This is the cleanest predictor of whether a company is in pilot purgatory or if they're moving forward with AI. And that is there a clear leader and coordinator, this conductor of AI in the organization? So let's take a look at what the conductor actually owns. They own three things. The first thing is they own the outcomes, the performance. This is a role that no one else has. The CIO runs the tools, the CFO runs the budget. The conductor is the only person whose sole job is to optimize across all of these so that you can execute on your AI roadmap. That's the empty chair. That's the gap that we have in the organization right now. The other thing that the conductor does is that they're making sure that the score is set, that the plan, the roadmap is in place, and that everyone agrees to this. How is AI in service of our strategic objectives? How do we narrow them down and prioritize them? Because guaranteed, everyone is coming to the table with multiple objectives. They have their own perspective of what is the most important thing that we should be using AI for. But we need to make sure that only a few are being pursued, again, at that enterprise level, that is going to drive organizational levels of value. Because if you keep it at that department level, then the value is going to be at that departmental level. And I believe that the opportunity is too big for you to only take that perspective. Now, these projects may only be a handful, maybe 3, 5, definitely not more than like what you can count on your two hands. So what is that roadmap going to look like? And this one person, your conductor, is making sure you're gathering that input from everyone, having the discussions with the C-suite and the board to decide these are the most important projects that we are going to invest in. Kachi and I often say use cases are not a strategy. Having a long list of initiatives and projects and pilots may feel really good, but that is not focus. And strategy is about what you will do and won't do in order to achieve your objectives. So the score, the roadmap is that strategy, and you need one person to make sure that it's very clear what the roadmap is, and also to change and adjust the roadmap as the situation changes. This is not a one and done deal. This is a situation where, because the competition is changing, the technology is changing, your customers' needs are changing, your organization itself is changing. And it's an opportunity to constantly be looking at that roadmap and deciding how are we going to not just execute on this, but also adjust it. Katya and I like to say that strategy is written in ink, but your roadmap is written in pencil. So because it's written in pencil, it's so important to make sure that everyone is on the same page as these changes are happening. And the changes will be happening faster and faster as you accelerate your adoption of AI. And then finally, there's the tempo issue. If you've ever seen the conductor sets the tempo. There's beating that baton up and down and back and forth. And how quickly should the front office move? How quickly should the ops be working? Making sure that finance is plugged in and has the information and is making the decisions at the same pace as everyone else needs to be doing this. Having the wrong tempo, having the wrong sequence of these decisions kills the momentum when everything else is in place. So having that person can say, hey, over here, you're moving too fast, slow down, because you're going to make decisions before we're ready to actually implement them. Or you over there in this department, you're slowing down, you're not making the decisions, you're not showing up, and you're slowing down everybody, and the momentum is dying because of this. And so what this conductor is doing is making sure everyone is making the decisions that they are responsible for at this rate that they need to be. One of my favorite examples of this is the legal department. Legal famously is not as fast as they could be working. Again, when things need to be looked at, a vendor contract, a decision around a particular process, how a decision can be made better, they tend to be a little bit slower. And it's important in this space when you're trying to put in agentic AI that legal is involved right from the very beginning, that safety and security is involved from the very beginning. So they understand the pace of which the decisions are being made, what decisions are coming down versus being called at the moment to make a decision. Again, setting that tempo, setting expectations, creating accountability is a key role for this person. And so that role may be empty today, but you can look around your organization and say, who is in the best position to be able to think about the whole of the organization? This is somebody who is a change agent, who has authority and credibility with the other people in your organization. They're able to think above each departmental, so they're not looking out for their own department. They're really driving for the entire enterprise. And the reality is, this role typically has never existed inside an organization, where somebody is driving that whole outcome for the entire organization. Now, historically, there is this one role, and that is the CEO. And I want to talk a little bit about the CEO as a conductor. If you're in a small or mid-cap company, you should be thinking about being this conductor because you're the only person in an organization who is already thinking about this. And the first conductor in most organizations is almost always the founder, the CEO, again, in these smaller organizations. And the reason why is you're already doing the work. You're already thinking about the overall picture, the outcomes. You're thinking about the strategy, that score, and you're also thinking about the tempo and the pace, the timing of which to do this. One data point here is from BCG AI Radar from a study they did in January 2026. And what they said is that trailblazer CEOs are already spending more than 7 hours a week working with, thinking about, or learning about AI personally. And I would say that's the floor. And below that, you don't have the fluency to be the conductor or even to be able to delegate it. And what we're finding, again, is that many CEOs are not comfortable with AI. So they punt it to somebody in the organization, typically in the CIO, without truly giving them that ability to look at the whole, because they think about it as a technology problem. And as we have seen, AI is clearly not a technology problem. Everyone owns it. So giving it to somebody just by default in the IT department is not going to work, and it hasn't worked over the past 2 years. So the inflection point here is you could be initially that conductor as a CEO. So at which point should you stop being the conductor? And it's not when you stop understanding AI. It's not when you no longer understand all the aspects of it. Trailblazer CEOs keep their fluency throughout their entire tenure. This is about staying on top of what's happening with AI, maybe not being, again, that expert, but understanding how AI is going to be impacting the strategic outcomes of the organization. You stop being the conductor when the whole gets too big to hold in one head, while also running the company. So when AI is in its infancy and its planning stages and its initial formulation about what that roadmap is going to look like, making the strategic choices of which projects should be involved, the CEO can be actively involved in that. But when it comes to the execution of that, this is when you need to step aside and let somebody come into that role who can own that execution, be that conductor. Again, the person who wakes up every single morning thinking about how we're going to use AI to drive value against our strategic objectives. And up to a point, a CEO can do that. And at some point, somebody else needs to take a lead role in that. But the CEO still stays involved. And again, it's because to make sure that there is this accountability for the entire organization, to ensure that this person has the authority and the credibility to be able to conduct the rest of the organization against that roadmap. And I want to take a minute now to talk about the board's role in all of this. The board's question used to be, does our CEO understand AI? Does the organization have an AI strategy? Is the organization staying safe and accountable and making sure that we're addressing all the risks around AI? And those are really important questions to be asking. But a new question to be asking is, who is our organization's conductor? Do they have the authority and the credibility to do the job? Is the conductor our CEO today? And if yes, who's our next conductor going to be? So again, the board is often thinking about succession planning. And then if the CEO is also the conductor, at what scale does that stop working? When do we know that this is a time to be moving? Again, this is in support of the CEO and their execution of the strategy, but making sure that the board is aware that this is a key question to be asking and to be looking into is, I think, a new question that the board should be considering asking. So there was a board survey by Pearl Meyer in April of this year that found that boards in the C-suite just do not agree on who owns AI. And again, who should be doing this, who should be understanding and driving those outcomes. And the gap doesn't get closed by yet another presentation. It gets closed by the board bringing up this conductor question and really asking and pressing the CEO, who owns the outcomes from AI? Who is driving this value that we can bring into our board meetings and be able to ask all these questions around how AI is supporting the business and the strategic objective. So I want to just go back to that opening story that was in HBR. That Fortune 500 insurance CEO ended his meeting without an answer. Basically, all of you own it. All of you have responsibility to own a piece of the AI decision map. And that's a normal place to start. But the leaders who are pulling ahead in 2026, the organizations that are already moving ahead have named that conductor. They're the ones who are thinking about the outcomes in a cohesive way because we have one person who is making sure everyone is coordinated. And if you don't have that, you are, again, having everyone working on their own little pet projects, their own little use cases, or even worse, you're a spectator on the sidelines, waiting for some sign, waiting for the right, quote, time to be jumping into AI. I think of this time period for those people is that there's tremendous FOMO, fear of missing out, but also tremendous fogey, fear of getting in. The waters look murky, they're dark, don't know what's in there, so I'm just going to stay on the dock. And that is probably the worst thing that you could be doing. So think about these 3 questions for your next executive offsite or board meeting. Can you name the one person who is defining what that roadmap looks like in just 2 seconds? Do you have somebody who is waking up every morning thinking about, really focused on driving value from AI? And who is going to succeed them? How are you going to make sure that there is coverage for that person? Because it's such an important role right now in this organization. At some point, someday, you won't need this. because AI will be ingrained in the way that you do work. But that time is not now. It's too new. It's way too volatile for people to be doing this by the seat of their pants. Let me end by saying and iterating again. What you need right now is one person who is going to wake up every day and think about driving that value. Because without it, the ways that use AI will remain small. They'll be focused on small little efficiencies. And if you're sitting there wondering, what are we getting for our AI efforts? Maybe one of the reasons why you're not getting that exponential value that everyone keeps talking about is because you don't have that person in place. So I encourage you to stop, take a look at your organization, look at the decisions that need to be made, understand who needs to make those decisions, and then very importantly, put one person in place who can be that conductor to make sure that all of these efforts are going to come out to significant real value for your organization.